if you're part of a DevOps or platform engineering team, you know that one of the things that you asked a lot about is creating different environments, be it a development environment, a project team environment, production, or others. So how can you go from a raw cluster or from zero all the way to cheesy hero, right? By providing your developers with environments quickly, but while keeping control of everything that is being deployed. Let's see how you can do that in the next few minutes. So today, in just a few minutes, I wanted to show you an option that you have to create a developer platform or an application platform that you can use to quickly take your clusters from zero. And when I mean zero, you have nothing installed in that cluster. You have no ingress controller, no monitoring, no nothing. So how can you go from a raw or zero cluster to an application ready cluster with a developer portal already embedded? For that today, we are going to be using Shipa Cloud, the best out there that you can use for doing that. And everything that we're going to be doing here, you can basically do it for free, right? From my infrastructure perspective, I have my Shipa Cloud account, which you can create your account under apps.shipa.cloud. It is free. You can sign up with GitHub, Google, and so on. It's incredibly easy. From my perspective today, I'm going to be using an Oracle Kubernetes engine cluster, which is Oracle's managed version of OKE. Experience is great, but feel free to use any other Kubernetes cluster provider that you may have. GKE, AKS, knock yourself out, right? For my example, I'm using OKE. So that's it. I have my Shipa Cloud account created and I have an OKE cluster created. The other thing I have here as well is my kubectl already connected to that cluster, right? So if I do kubectl get nodes, you can see my nodes already available there. Awesome. Cluster has nothing installed. If I do kubectl get namespace, I have nothing installed. There's no Prometheus, no monitoring, no security, no nothing. It's just a blank raw cluster from zero, right? Awesome. So how do we get started? Assuming you're brand new to Shipa and you want to bring in your developers, the first part or the first place you have to go is user management. This is where you want to start. Directly from here under user management, user management in your Shipa Cloud account. You can go under user management. You have here a teams tab. Under teams, you can create these different teams, and basically here it depends on how you want to structure things. Project 1, project 2, development, team 1, 2, go nuts, right? Create as many teams as you want. The second step for you is to then add users, right? You can quickly invite users directly from here, from the users tab, and by just typing in your developer email, your developer will then get an email with an invite to join your Shipa Cloud account. So at this point, you own the org or you own the Shipa Cloud account and you're building the teams and you're inviting the developers for those teams. The other thing you can do as well is you can add the permissions to the teams. We already have pre-created roles such as developer and an operator. So if you're inviting developers, you can assign your developers the developer role. Easy, right? And directly from here later, they will be able to log into Shipa as a developer and see what you give them access to see. Awesome. First part is easy, right? You create a Shipa Cloud account, you come in under user management, you create one or multiple teams and invite one or multiple developers. The more, the better. Now, how do you create environments, right? To give your developer access to deploy and manage their applications. Self-service model. So they get out of your back and they don't use your time to do that. You can quickly create own frameworks. And here, frameworks are Shipa's concept to create environments. So you can think of frameworks as a combination of policies that are going to be applied to an environment. When you click on create framework, Shipa will give you a couple options, right? You can create the most basic framework or you can go to the most advanced framework where you can set up policies across autoscale, registry control, and everything in between. To keep this video simple, we're gonna choose deploy applications with reasonable defaults. I just want to get an environment up and running that my developers can use to deploy applications. I click on next, and here I can enter like project 1 maybe. If you just created your Shipa Cloud account, you're gonna see a plan called Shipa Plan. Just pick this one up. Basically, this is the resource limit that you can set. And you can select one of the teams that you created. In my case, I'll select Dev Project 1. You can add multiple teams to the same framework and kind of configure that as multiple teams using the same environment that you want, or you can create multiple. So if I create Project 1, I can go ahead and create Project 2. And I'm gonna select my Dev Project 2. So my new Dev Project 2 that I created, right? Awesome. So I've created these frameworks or environments here on Shipa with the minimum amount of policies and security, just the default and the bare minimum required for my developers to deploy their applications. So now, how do I actually connect these frameworks to my cluster? You can do that in the clusters page. If you come here in the cluster page and you click on add cluster, here you're gonna have to enter the name, okay, dev cluster, for example. And here you can select the frameworks that you want to connect to this cluster. You can select one framework or you can select multiple frameworks. The important thing to remember is that each framework you connect to your cluster will become a namespace in that cluster. So later, when your developers point to this environment to deploy their applications will then be deployed to its respective, or the framework's respective, namespace created in that cluster. So if I select Project 1 and Project 2 that we just created, I can click on Next. The next fields that is going to add me or ask me to enter is my Kubernetes API or URL, a token for a service account that Shipa can actually use to use that cluster, and a CA certificate that Shipa can also use to connect to that cluster. You can find all of those details directly here. You have information directly here on how to get it and how to create a service account directly from here. This is also available under learn.shipa.io in our documents in the section Kubernetes clusters and then connecting cluster. And I have created actually a cheat code that I've made available on Gist, and I'm gonna leave it available here in the comments as well. It's a basic shell script that you can create. You can just copy and run. I will use this. I already have my Shipa credentials here, which is basically the shell script that I just showed you. If I run that, what this is gonna do is it's gonna create the service accounts and the permissions that I need in that cluster to for Shipa to connect. And it's gonna display the IP, the token, and the certificate for that I need to place into Shipa, right? Don't bother copying this. By the time you watch this video, this cluster is long gone. But now it's just a copy and paste exercise. So I'll copy the URL. I'm gonna come back here. Now I need the token, which is displayed here. And last but not least, I need my certificate. And that's a big certificate. There you go. And if I click in here, I can click on next. Next, it's gonna ask me if I want Shipa to connect to an existing ingress controller. If you're connecting Shipa to an existing cluster that you're using from before and you already have like Nginx or you have Istio or Traffic, for example, you can enter that ingress controller information here. So Shipa will use your existing ingress. If not, which is my case, I don't have an ingress controller installed in my cluster. I don't need to set up anything. When Shipa connects to my cluster, Shipa will automatically install and configure Nginx for me. So I don't even need to worry about that. How cool is that? I can just click on create. The cluster connection process will take between 1 and 2 minutes. And you can see the event and the progress directly in the events page. And you can follow up here. Now, let's just wait. All right, so the process finished and I can see my cluster was successfully added. Awesome. If I go back into my terminal and I run kubectl get namespace again, I can then see a couple new namespaces, right? I can see a Shipa namespace, which is basically where Shipa is going to be running its services inside that cluster that it's now connected to Shipa, my Oracle Kubernetes cluster. And I also see Shipa project 1 and I see Shipa project 2, right? Remember, for each framework you connect to your cluster, it creates a dedicated namespace. So you can think of a framework as an environment that is connected to your cluster, and it enforces a bunch of policies that you defined before. Awesome. So in literally just maybe 5 minutes, you can go from a cluster that is a raw cluster to an application ready cluster that is with a developer platform that is ready for your developers to deploy their applications and manage their applications. What does it look like from a developer perspective? Easy. You invited your users before, right? Your developers. If not, do it now. And as they are part of the users invited, they can come into applications. They can create their app. I can call it here Bulletin OKE Demo. I'm using my admin credential, but here they will be able to see project 1 or project 2, for example, depending on how you structure. Remember, when you created a framework, you added a team, right, to that framework. So based on the developer that logs in, if he's from team 1, the developer will see project 1 framework or project 2. Really depends on how you structure, right? Your developer can then create the application. By creating the application, Shipa will make it available here. Your developer can click on it, and your developer can come to deploy, for example, pick an image, one of his images, his or her image, and can click on deploy. The deployment will take just a few seconds. But one of the things that you will see is that at this point, your developer is now interfacing with the framework or the environment you gave your developer rather than the underlying cluster. So now your developers can deploy their applications, can manage their applications, see plans, transactions, resource. They can access their application directly from here because Shipa connecting to the ingress controller creates an endpoint for the application. Your developers can then understand application dependencies, how it communicates with other applications that they may have. They can set integration into incident management tools and so much more. And you as a platform engineer or a DevOps engineer, you can keep on adding more frameworks or adding more environments, if you will. You can go again from the most basic policy possible to the most extensible policy covering production environments or critical application environments. And you can keep on connecting to the cluster that you have or connecting to new clusters, right? And giving access to your developers. I hope that was helpful. And I hope that you could see one option that you have to go from 0 to an application ready cluster with a developer portal for your developers in just 5 minutes. Thank you.